As a billionaire CEO, I mocked my janitor. His revenge exposed crime and forced me to change. Victoria Sterling leaned back in her leather chair, smirking. You know what? I'm bored. Let's have some fun. She pointed at the janitor who was mopping near the door. You there, come here. Tell us how you'd invest $1 billion. The board members laughed, some covering their mouths. Marcus Washington paused his mopping and looked up calmly. Ma'am, with all due respect, you might want to sit down for this. Victoria laughed harder. Oh, this is rich. The janitor's giving me investment advice. Please, enlighten us. Marcus set down his mop and straightened his back. Your European semiconductor acquisition. You're about to lose $300 million by Thursday. Victoria's smile vanished. The room went silent. What happens next will shake the foundation of Sterling Industries forever. Will Victoria's arrogance cost her everything? Can Marcus prove he's more than meets the eye? Dear viewer, I humbly request you to watch or listen till the end and rate this story out of 10. Your rating will help me give you better stories in the next videos. If you're watching my story for the first time, subscribe to this channel and press the bell icon now so you don't miss the notifications of my daily new stories. Thank you. And now, let's dive into the full story. The morning sun cast golden rays through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Sterling Industries' executive suite, illuminating the polished mahogany New York table where 8 board members sat in their $1,000 suits. Victoria Sterling, the 45-year-old billionaire CEO with perfectly styled blonde hair and ice-blue eyes, stood at the head of the table reviewing quarterly projections on a massive digital screen. Her Valentino dress and Cartier jewelry screamed wealth and power. The semiconductor deal closes Friday, she announced, her voice carrying the confidence of someone who had never been told no. We're looking at a $400 million profit within the first year. The board members nodded approvingly, some taking notes on their tablets. Victoria thrived on these moments, the absolute control, the unwavering respect, the knowledge that her word was law in this building. That was when she noticed him. Marcus Washington, a 58-year-old janitor, was methodically mopping the far corner of the conference room. His gray maintenance uniform was crisp despite the early hour. His movements were efficient and practiced. He had been with Sterling Industries for 3 years, always arriving before dawn, always leaving after dark. Most executives had never bothered to learn his name. Victoria's lips curved into a mischievous smile. The quarterly reports had been tedious, and she had been entertaining clients all week. She wanted entertainment, something to break the monotony of predictable success. Excuse me, she called out, her tone dripping with false sweetness. You there, with the mop? Marcus paused and turned slowly, his weathered dark brown face showing no emotion. Yes, ma'am. Come here for a moment. Victoria gestured grandly. We need a fresh perspective. Several board members exchanged confused glances. Richard Chen, the CFO, raised an eyebrow but said nothing. Patricia Morrison, the COO, smirked knowingly she had seen Victoria's cruel jokes before. Marcus walked toward the table, still holding his mop. He leaned it against the wall before approaching. His work boots squeaked slightly on the polished floor. What's your name? Victoria asked, though she had no intention of remembering it. Marcus Washington, ma'am. Well, Marcus Washington. We're discussing $1 billion investment strategy. She leaned forward, elbows on the table. I'm curious, what would you do with $1 billion? The room erupted in barely suppressed laughter. James Whitmore, the youngest board member at 32, didn't even try to hide his grin. Margaret Sutton, head of operations, shook her head in amusement. Marcus stood calmly, his expression unchanged. He had spent 3 years watching these people, learning their patterns, understanding their blind spots. He had endured their dismissive glances, their casual disrespect, their assumption that his uniform defined his intelligence. Ma'am, I don't think Marcus began. No, I insist, Victoria interrupted, clearly enjoying herself. You've been cleaning these offices for what, 2 years? 3. You must have picked up something. Share your wisdom with us. More laughter. Patricia actually slapped the table. Marcus took a breath. He had sworn to himself when he took this position that he would keep his head down, do his work, and stay invisible. But something in Victoria's smug expression, in the board members' condescending laughter, broke through his carefully maintained patience. Your European semiconductor acquisition, Marcus said quietly. You're making a mistake. The laughter stopped like someone had flipped a switch. Victoria's smile remained frozen on her face, but her eyes hardened. Excuse me? The deal you mentioned closing Friday. You're about to lose approximately $300 million by Thursday afternoon. The silence that followed was deafening. Richard Chen leaned forward. James Whitmore's mouth hung open. Patricia Morrison's smirk had completely vanished. Victoria stood slowly, her chair scraping against the floor. What did you just say? Marcus met her gaze steadily. Dynatech Solutions, the company you're acquiring their patent portfolio, is about to be challenged by a Norwegian firm. The lawsuit was filed this morning, European time. Your due diligence team missed it because they focused on domestic litigation only. That's how could you possibly, Victoria sputtered, her composure cracking. The Norwegian company Nordex Industries developed similar technology 8 months before Dynatech. They filed patents in the EU registry first, but there was an administrative delay that made it appear Dynatech had priority. Nordex discovered the discrepancy 3 weeks ago. Richard Chen was already pulling up his tablet, fingers flying across the screen. His face went pale. My God, he's right. There's a filing. It's in Norwegian, that's why our automated alerts didn't catch it. Who are you? Victoria demanded, her voice sharp as glass. Marcus remained calm, but something shifted in his posture, a straightening of his shoulders, a slight lift of his chin. For the first time, the board member saw past the gray uniform and noticed the intelligence in his dark eyes, the confident set of his jaw. I'm the janitor, ma'am, just like you said. Nobody who pushes a mop knows about EU patent registries and Norwegian corporate law, Patricia said, her voice edged with suspicion. Start talking. I clean this building, Marcus replied evenly. I see documents in trash cans. I hear phone conversations. I notice things. James Whitmore snapped. You'd need specialized knowledge to even understand what you were looking at. Victoria slowly sat back down, but her eyes never left Marcus. Her mind was racing. The semiconductor deal was her baby, her major play for the quarter. If this janitor was right and she had missed something this critical, the board would have questions. Investors would have questions. Richard, verify everything he just said, Victoria commanded. Now. Richard was already on it. Within 2 minutes, he pulled up the Nordex filing, ran it through translation software, and cross-referenced it with Dynatech's patent dates. He's absolutely correct, Richard said, his voice hollow. Nordex has ironclad priority. If they win this lawsuit and Dynatech's core technology becomes worthless, we'd be acquiring an empty shell. The room erupted in chaos. Board members started talking over each other, demanding to know how their legal team had missed this, why their analysts hadn't flagged it. Victoria held up one hand, silencing them all. She stared at Marcus with a mixture of fury and unwilling respect. Who are you? Marcus picked up his mop. Nobody important, ma'am. Just a man trying to do his job. He turned toward the door. Stop. Victoria's voice cracked like a whip. You don't walk away from me, not after that. Marcus paused but didn't turn around. You just saved this company $300 million, Victoria continued. That doesn't happen by accident. That doesn't happen because someone notices things. I want answers, and I want them now. Marcus slowly turned back. The morning sun behind him created a silhouette, making it impossible to read his expression. Sometimes, he said quietly, people see exactly what they expect to see. You expected a janitor, so that's all you saw. The executive suite remained frozen in shocked silence as Marcus's words hung in the air. Victoria felt heat rising in her cheeks, not from embarrassment, but from anger. Nobody spoke to her like that. Nobody walked away from her. And nobody, absolutely nobody, made her feel like she had been played. Security, she said coldly. Lock down the building. I want a complete background check on Marcus Washington within the hour. I want to know where he went to school, where he worked, everything. And I want his employment file on my desk immediately. Patricia Morrison was already on her phone. James Whitmore had opened his laptop. Richard Chen was staring at Marcus like he had seen a ghost. Ma'am, Marcus said, his voice still calm, I have 3 more floors to clean before my shift ends. May I continue my work? The audacity of the question left Victoria momentarily speechless. Here she was, offering what amounted to an interrogation, and he was asking to mop floors. Sit down, she commanded, gesturing to an empty chair at the table. I'd prefer to stand, ma'am. These chairs are expensive, and my uniform isn't exactly clean. Several board members bristled at the response. Margaret Sutton leaned over to whisper something to Patricia, who nodded grimly. I don't care about the damn chair, Victoria snapped. I care about how a janitor knows more about my business dealings than my entire analysis team. Sit down. Marcus hesitated, then carefully sat at the far end of the table. He looked distinctly uncomfortable, his large frame not quite fitting the sleek modern design. His work-roughened hands rested on the gleaming mahogany surface. Victoria walked slowly around the table, her heels clicking precisely with each step. She had built her empire by reading people, by identifying their weaknesses and exploiting them. But Marcus Washington was a blank wall. "Let's start simple," she said, standing directly across from him. "Where did you learn about international patent law?" "I read, ma'am." "Don't play games with me. What's your educational background?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment. "I have a GED. James Whitmore laughed outright again. "And you expect us to believe?" "Quiet, James." Victoria cut him off, her eyes never leaving Marcus. She had spent 30 years in boardrooms and could recognize when someone was telling the truth while hiding something bigger. "What else?" "That's all, ma'am. High school equivalency, no college." "Then, where?" Victoria stopped as Patricia burst back into the room, tablet in hand, looking pale. "Victoria, you need to see this." Patricia placed the tablet on the table, turning it so everyone could see. It was Marcus's employment file, but something was wrong. The photo matched, the name matched, but the details were sparse, almost suspiciously sparse. "He was hired 3 years ago, through a temp agency," Patricia explained. Standard background checks showed nothing unusual: GED, some scattered employment history, references checked out. "But look at this." She swiped to another screen. "I just ran a deeper search. Marcus Washington exists, but it's like he appeared out of nowhere 15 years ago. Before that, nothing. No birth certificate, no school records, no paper trail at all." The room went very quiet. Victoria felt a chill run down her spine. "Are you in witness protection?" Richard asked bluntly. "No, sir," Marcus replied. "Then explain the gap," Victoria demanded. 15 years of nothing, then suddenly you exist. People don't just materialize. Marcus looked down at his hands. When he spoke, his voice carried a weight that hadn't been there before. "Some people need to disappear for a while. When they come back different." "That's not an answer," Patricia said sharply. "It's the only answer I'm giving." Victoria slammed her hand on the table, making several board members jump. "You don't get to decide that. You just saved, or rather cost me, hundreds of millions of dollars. You've demonstrated knowledge that shouldn't exist in someone with your background. And now you're telling me you're a ghost." "I'm telling you I'm a janitor who made an observation," Marcus said firmly. "Nothing more." "Then make another observation," Victoria challenged, leaning forward. "If you're so observant, what else am I missing?" Marcus met her eyes, and for the first time Victoria saw something dangerous there: intelligence barely restrained, knowledge carefully hidden. It was like looking at a tiger pretending to be a house cat. "Your Kaufman merger," Marcus said quietly. "The one scheduled for December." Richard's head snapped up. "That's confidential. That hasn't even been announced yet." "How?" "The executive bathrooms on the 42nd floor have excellent acoustics," Marcus continued. "I clean them every Tuesday and Thursday at 6 a.m. Last Thursday, Mr. Chen was on a conference call discussing the terms. What you don't know is that Kaufman's CEO, Michael Brennan, is planning to retire. He hasn't told his board yet. He's using your merger to pump up his stock price before he exits, but he's already negotiating with your competitor, Helix Corporation, for a better deal." The color drained from Richard's face. "That's impossible. We have a signed letter of intent." "Non-binding," Marcus said, "and easily breakable with a small penalty that Helix is willing to cover for the chance to acquire Kaufman's retail network." "How could you possibly know what Helix is willing to pay?" Margaret demanded. "Because Mr. Brennan's assistant talks to her sister every Monday morning in the parking garage. She parks on level 3, section B. I'm usually washing the garage floors when she arrives. She's worried about losing her job if the Helix deal goes through. She's been very detailed about the terms." Victoria felt like the floor was tilting beneath her. Every word Marcus spoke was specific, verifiable, and terrifying. This wasn't someone who had overheard random conversations. This was someone who had been systematically gathering intelligence. "You've been spying on us," Patricia accused. "I've been cleaning," Marcus corrected. "You've been ignoring me. There's a difference." James stood up angrily. "This is corporate espionage. We should call the police and—" "Tell them what?" Marcus asked calmly. "That your janitor has good hearing? That he reads the documents you throw away instead of shredding them? That he pays attention when you forget he's in the room? Victoria held up her hand again, silencing James before he could respond. Her mind was working furiously. Marcus was right. Nothing he had done was technically illegal. Careless executives discussing confidential matters in front of service staff wasn't espionage, it was stupidity. But it was more than that. The way Marcus connected disparate pieces of information, the way he understood complex financial structures, the way he predicted outcomes. This wasn't just observation, this was expertise. You weren't always a janitor, Victoria said. It wasn't a question. Marcus didn't answer. You've had training, serious training. Finance, military intelligence, FBI, still nothing. Victoria circled the table again, her mind racing through possibilities. Someone with Marcus's analytical skills didn't clean floors unless they were hiding or running from something. His missing 15 years, his careful invisibility, his deliberate choice of the most overlooked position in a major corporation. It all pointed to someone who needed to disappear. Here's what's going to happen, Victoria said decisively. You're going to tell me everything you know about my company's operations, every conversation you've overheard, every document you've read, every vulnerability you've identified. In return, I won't dig into your past. Whatever you're hiding, it stays hidden. Marcus shook his head slowly. I don't think so, ma'am. Excuse me? You're offering me protection I don't need in exchange for information I won't give. You're used to buying people, Miss Sterling. I'm not for sale. The room erupted in outrage. Board members began shouting about ingratitude, disrespect, about having Marcus arrested, though none of them could quite articulate for what. Victoria raised her voice above the chaos. Enough! She waited until silence fell again. Everyone out. Now. This conversation is between Marcus and me. Victoria, I don't think, Patricia began. That includes you, Patricia. The board members filed out reluctantly, casting suspicious glances at Marcus as they left. Richard was the last to go, pausing at the door. Victoria, be careful. We don't know who this man really is. That's exactly what I'm about to find out. The door clicked shut, leaving Victoria and Marcus alone in the vast conference room. The silence stretched between them like a drawn blade. Victoria studied Marcus with new eyes, seeing past the gray uniform to the man underneath. His posture was relaxed but ready. His hands still rested calmly on the table despite the tension crackling through the room. This was someone accustomed to pressure, someone who had learned to stay calm when others panicked. She pulled out the chair directly across from him and sat down, a calculated move to put them on equal footing. It was a negotiation technique she had perfected over decades. Make someone feel like an equal, then go for the throat. Let's try this differently, Victoria said, her voice stripped of its earlier command. You've been here 3 years. In that time, you've watched this company from an angle nobody else sees. You've identified problems my entire executive team missed. That's worth something. I have a job, ma'am. I do it well. That should be worth something, too. You're wasted as a janitor. That's my choice to make. Victoria leaned back, reassessing. Most people crumbled when she pushed. Marcus just became more immovable. It was like arguing with a mountain. What do you want? She asked bluntly. To finish cleaning the building and go home. Nobody who's smart enough to save me $300 million wants to mop floors. There's an angle here. There's always an angle. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then, you're right that I wasn't always a janitor, but you're wrong about what I want. I had a different life once. It cost me everything that mattered. This, he gestured at his uniform. This is exactly where I want to be. Why? Because nobody expects anything from a janitor except clean floors. There's peace in that. Victoria felt a flicker of recognition. She had built Sterling Industries from a small investment firm into a multi-billion-dollar empire, and every step had cost her something. 2 divorces, a daughter who barely spoke to her, friendships sacrificed at the altar of success. She understood the weight of expectation better than most. But she also understood opportunity when she saw it. What if I told you I could use someone like you? Victoria said carefully. Not as an executive, I can see you'd hate that, but as an advisor. Someone who sees what others miss. You have a building full of advisors, ma'am. Very expensive ones who clearly aren't doing their jobs if a janitor caught what they missed. Victoria's voice hardened. The Dynatech deal would have destroyed our 4th quarter. The Kaufman merger could still destroy the 1st quarter if what you said about Brennan is true. How many other disasters are lurking that I don't know about? That's not my problem. It could be your opportunity. Marcus shook his head. You're not listening. I don't want opportunities. I don't want promotions. I don't want visibility. I want to be left alone. Then why did you speak up? Victoria challenged. If you wanted to stay invisible, you could have kept quiet, let me walk into the Dynatech disaster. Why warn me? The question hung in the air. Marcus's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Because I'm tired of watching good people lose their jobs when executives make stupid mistakes, he finally said. Sterling Industries employs 3,000 people. The Dynatech loss would have triggered layoffs. Your board would have demanded cuts. You know who gets cut first? Maintenance, food service, security, the people who actually make this building function. You warned me to protect other janitors? Victoria couldn't quite keep the skepticism from her voice. I warned you because Maria Rodriguez has 3 kids and diabetes and she works in the cafeteria. Because James Chen, not your CFO, the other James Chen who guards the parking garage, is 6 months from retirement. Because 32-year-old Tommy Williams just started in maintenance and has student loans he'll never pay off if he loses this job. You want to know what I see that you don't? I see them. The words hit Victoria like a physical blow. She had built her empire by focusing on the big picture market trends, competitive advantages, shareholder value. The individual workers were just numbers on a spreadsheet, necessary overhead. She had never considered that someone might be watching them, caring about them, protecting them. That's very noble, she said, recovering her composure. But it doesn't change the situation. You've exposed a level of knowledge that can't be ignored. My board won't let this go. Patricia's probably already running deeper background checks. Richard is going to want answers about how you knew about Kaufman. You can't go back to being invisible. Watch me. Victoria paused, choosing her words carefully. I'm trying to help you here. If you won't work with me, I can't protect you from the board. Patricia especially thinks you're a corporate spy. She's going to push for a full investigation. They'll subpoena your records, dig into your past, expose whatever it is you're hiding. Let them try. The quiet confidence in his voice made Victoria pause. This wasn't bravado. This was certainty. Marcus wasn't afraid of investigation because he knew they wouldn't find anything, or because what they found wouldn't matter. She changed tactics. The Kaufman information, is Brennan really negotiating with Helix? Marcus hesitated, then nodded. His assistant Rebecca Chen is his daughter-in-law. She married his son against Brennan's wishes. He's been looking for an excuse to fire her since the wedding. She knows it. She's scared. When people are scared, they talk. Can you prove it? Your people can prove it, if they look. Brennan's had 3 meetings with Helix's CEO in the past month. They're not listed on his official calendar, but there's a pattern. He blocks time for golf every other Thursday afternoon. He doesn't play golf. He meets Adam Crest at a private club in Boston. Victoria was already pulling out her phone, texting Richard instructions. If Marcus was right about this too, the implications were staggering. They would need to either renegotiate the Kaufman deal or walk away entirely. How many other time bombs am I sitting on? She asked, looking up from her phone. You want a list? Yes. Then we're negotiating. Victoria felt a smile tug at her lips despite herself. I thought you didn't want anything. I don't want anything for myself. But if I'm going to help you, and I'm not saying I am, then things change around here. The people who keep this building running get better pay, better benefits, and job security. You don't lay off maintenance staff when profits dip. You don't cut the cafeteria budget. You don't treat security guards like furniture. You're negotiating a union contract. I'm telling you the price of my cooperation. Victoria leaned back, studying Marcus with newfound respect. He wasn't protecting himself, he was protecting his people. It was a leadership instinct she recognized because she had once had it herself, before success had calcified her priorities. I can't make those promises without board approval, she said. Then get approval. It could take weeks. I've been here 3 years. I can wait. Victoria's phone buzzed a text from Richard confirming. Brennan met with Crest yesterday, getting details now. How did we miss this? She showed Marcus the message. You were right again. I'm always right, ma'am. That's the problem. What do you mean? Marcus stood up, reaching for his mop. You're about to offer me a job, a real one, with an office and a salary and expectations. You're going to want me to sit in meetings and analyze deals and become part of your machine. And for a while it'll work. I'll make you money, catch your mistakes, earn your trust, but eventually you'll forget who I really am. You'll expect more and more until there's nothing left of the man who just wanted to clean floors in peace. That's remarkably cynical. That's remarkably experienced. Victoria watched him walk toward the door, her mind working furiously. She couldn't let him leave, not with what he knew, and more importantly, not with what he could do for Sterling Industries. But she also recognized that traditional incentives wouldn't work. Marcus wasn't motivated by money or power or prestige. What if you could help them without becoming part of the machine? She called out. Marcus paused, his hand on the door handle. What if you stayed exactly as you are, same job, same uniform, same invisibility, but you fed me information? Anonymous tips. You'd never have to attend meetings or write reports. Just tell me what I need to know. You want me to be your spy. I want you to be my eyes. There's a difference. Marcus turned around slowly. And the conditions I mentioned, I'll present them to the board this afternoon. I can't guarantee they'll all approve, but I can guarantee they'll take it seriously. Why would they listen? I'm nobody. Because you just saved us $300 million and potentially prevented a disastrous merger. Because you've demonstrated value that can't be ignored. And because Victoria paused, choosing her words carefully, I'm very good at getting what I want. Marcus stood in the doorway, weighing his options. Every instinct told him to walk away, to go back to the safety of anonymity. But he thought about Maria Rodriguez and her kids, about James Chen counting down to retirement, about Tommy Williams drowning in debt. He'd been watching out for them from the shadows for 3 years. Victoria was offering him a chance to protect them more effectively. If I do this, and I'm not saying I will, there are rules, Marcus said. Name them first. Nobody else knows. Not your board, not your assistants, nobody. As far as anyone's concerned, you fired me after today, or I quit. Either story works. Victoria frowned. The board already knows what happened. I can't make them forget. Then you explain that you investigated me, found nothing useful, and decided I was just lucky or lying. You humiliate me publicly. Make it convincing. Why would you want that? Because I need to be invisible again. Right now I'm interesting. I need to be forgotten. Victoria nodded slowly. What else? Second, any information I give you, you figure out how to verify it yourself. You never cite me as a source. You never hint that you have inside intelligence. As far as anyone knows, you're just doing better due diligence. That could be difficult if time is limited. Then you'll have to work fast. Those are my terms. And the third rule. Marcus walked back to the table, leaning on it with both hands. If I ever tell you something that would hurt the people at the bottom of this organization, layoffs, pay cuts, benefit reductions, you ignore it. I won't be responsible for making their lives worse. That could tie my hands in a crisis. Then you'll have to find another way through the crisis. I'm not helping you build profit on their backs. Victoria studied him for a long moment. These weren't the demands of an opportunist or a corporate spy. These were the conditions of someone who had learned hard lessons about loyalty and betrayal, someone who had decided where his allegiances lay. I'll agree to your terms with one addition, she said. You tell me what happened 15 years ago. What you're hiding. I can't work with someone who might be a liability. If you're running from law enforcement, if you're wanted for something. I'm not wanted for anything, Marcus interrupted. And it's not relevant. Let me be the judge of that. Marcus was quiet for so long that Victoria thought he might refuse entirely. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. I used to work in finance, high-level portfolio management for very wealthy clients. I was good at it, maybe too good. I made people a lot of money and I got paid extremely well for it. He paused, his jaw working. Then I discovered that one of my biggest clients was using the portfolio I'd built to fund human trafficking operations, moving money for organized crime. Victoria's eyes widened, but she stayed silent. When I found out, I had a choice: report it and probably end up dead, or keep quiet and be complicit. I chose a third option. I destroyed everything, blew the whistle to the FBI, testified in grand jury proceedings, helped them trace the money. 24 people went to prison, including my client and 3 people from my firm. That's heroic, Victoria said softly. That's naive, Marcus corrected bitterly. The people I put away had connections, friends, family members who didn't appreciate what I'd done. I got death threats. My apartment was burned down. My sister, his voice cracked. My sister was killed in what the police called a random carjacking. It wasn't random. The pain in his voice was so raw that Victoria had to look away. Witness protection wouldn't take me because the trial was over and the immediate threats were considered manageable. The FBI said I should relocate and change my name. So I did. I became Marcus Washington. I got a GED under my new identity, and I found the most invisible job I could think of. And for 3 years it worked. Until today. Until today, Victoria echoed. She felt the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. She had pushed Marcus out of hiding for her own benefit, exposed him when he had explicitly tried to stay hidden. If anything happened to him now, it would be her fault. "I'm sorry," she said, and meant it. "I didn't know. Now you do. So you understand why I need to disappear again." Victoria stood up, pacing to the window. The city stretched out below her, thousands of people pursuing thousands of agendas. Marcus had given up a lucrative career, his identity, his family's safety, all for the principle that money shouldn't fund misery. She had built her empire on profit margins and market dominance, rarely thinking about where the money came from or where it went. "I'll make the board believe you were a dead end," she said decisively. "I'll make it humiliating for both of us. I'll take the blame for wasting their time on a janitor with delusions. They'll forget about you within a week. Thank you. But I'm keeping you on payroll, same job, same everything. And when you see something I need to know, you tell me." "How?" Victoria thought for a moment. "The executive bathroom on 47. There's a maintenance closet inside. I'll check it every morning at 7:15. If you need to leave me information, write it on paper and leave it in the bucket behind the cleaning supplies. Use gloves, no fingerprints. I'll handle verification and action from there. Old school. Old school works. No electronic trail, no surveillance footage, no witnesses." Marcus nodded slowly. "And the conditions for the maintenance staff?" "I'll present them to the board this afternoon, but I'll frame it as my own initiative, a morale improvement program or something. They'll grumble about costs, but they'll approve it. I own 51% of voting shares. I can push it through if I need to. Why would you do that? You don't know these people." "No," Victoria admitted. "But you do. And you just risked everything to protect them. That's worth something to me." For the first time, Marcus's stern expression softened slightly, not quite a smile, but close. "You're not what I expected, Miss Sterling. Neither are you, Mr. Washington." Marcus picked up his mop again. "I should get back to work. I have 3 floors left, and this conversation has put me behind schedule." "One more thing," Victoria said, as he reached the door. "The name you used before Marcus Washington. If I were to look into your past career, what name would I find?" Marcus hesitated. "Then, you won't find anything. That person doesn't exist anymore. Let him stay dead." After Marcus left, Victoria stood alone in the conference room for several minutes. Her hands were shaking slightly, not from fear, but from the adrenaline of having accidentally recruited the most unusual asset her company had ever had, a janitor who saw everything, a ghost with a conscience, a man who had sacrificed everything for principles she had forgotten she had. Her phone buzzed with multiple messages from board members demanding updates. She ignored them all, and instead opened her email to draft a memo. The subject line read, "New Employee Welfare Initiative." By the time her board reconvened at 2 p.m., Victoria had her story straight. She would tell them that Marcus Washington was exactly what he appeared to be, an observant janitor who had gotten lucky with the Dynatech information and had invented the Kaufman story to seem more important. She had investigated his claims personally and found them exaggerated or fabricated. The whole thing had been an embarrassing waste of executive time. Patricia would be skeptical. Richard would want more proof. But Victoria would sell it because Victoria Sterling always got what she wanted. And what she wanted now was to protect the man who had shown her that sometimes the most valuable assets in a company weren't the ones in the corner offices. The board meeting at 2 p.m. was exactly as contentious as Victoria had anticipated. She stood at the head of the conference table, her prepared statement ready, while 8 skeptical faces stared back at her. "I owe you all an apology," Victoria began, injecting just the right amount of chagrin into her voice. "This morning's incident with the janitor was a waste of everyone's time, and I take full responsibility for letting it escalate." Patricia leaned forward. "So, you're saying his information about Dynatech was wrong?" "I'm saying it was partially correct, but fundamentally misleading." "Yes, there's a Norwegian lawsuit, but our legal team has reviewed it and confirmed it has no merit. Nordex is using a timing discrepancy to launch a nuisance suit, nothing more. Dynatech's patents are solid. It was a careful lie built on a foundation of truth." There was a lawsuit, but Victoria had spent the afternoon making sure her company quietly exited the acquisition deal. She had blamed it on changing market conditions to the sellers. Nobody needed to know that Marcus had saved them. "And Kaufman?" Richard asked. "Complete fabrication. I spoke with Michael Brennan personally. He assured me there are no side negotiations with anyone, especially not Helix. The janitor apparently overheard something in a bathroom and constructed an elaborate fantasy." Another lie, but a necessary one. Victoria had actually called Brennan and cryptically mentioned that she had heard interesting rumors about Helix. Brennan had gone silent for 10 seconds too long before denying everything. That silence told Victoria everything she needed to know. The Kaufman deal was dead, she just hadn't told her board yet. "I don't buy it," Patricia said flatly. "That man knew too much to be making things up." "He's observant, and he reads financial news," Victoria countered. Janitor's patent issues were reported in a Norwegian trade journal 3 weeks ago, obscure but publicly available. Anyone could have found it with enough digging. As for Kaufman, Brennan does meet with Helix's CEO regularly. They're both on the board of the Boston Children's Hospital Foundation. That's not conspiracy, it's charity work. James Whitmore was nodding, clearly relieved to dismiss the morning's chaos. Margaret Sutton still looked doubtful. Richard was taking notes, his expression unreadable. "So what do we do about the janitor?" Patricia pressed. "Nothing," Victoria said firmly. "He's an employee doing his job. Yes, he overstepped this morning, but frankly, I invited that by putting him on the spot. We're not going to harass or fire a maintenance worker because I made a poor decision. Consider the matter closed." "You investigated his background, though," Patricia said. "The missing years, the identity issues." "I had HR look into it. It's messy but innocent. He had some personal problems years ago, changed his name legally, started over. It's not criminal, just sad. And it's none of our business." Patricia looked like she wanted to argue, but Victoria cut her off with a raised hand. "Enough. We've wasted half a day on this. Let's move on to the actual business. I'm proposing a new employee welfare initiative." She pulled up a presentation on the main screen outlining improved benefits for hourly workers, wage increases, better health insurance, job security guarantees, enhanced retirement matching. The numbers made several board members wince. "This will cost us approximately $8 million annually," Richard calculated. "It will also reduce turnover by an estimated 40%, improve efficiency, and generate positive press," Victoria countered. "We've been so focused on executive compensation and shareholder returns that we've neglected the foundation. Consider this an infrastructure investment." "This is about the janitor," Patricia said accusingly. "You're feeling guilty." "This is about running a sustainable business," Victoria snapped. "Our maintenance staff turnover is 65% annually. Do you know how much it costs to constantly retrain people? Security, food service, facilities management. We hemorrhage workers because we pay just above minimum wage with minimal benefits. That's short-sighted." She wasn't wrong, and the board knew it. Victoria had done her research during the afternoon, pulling statistics that proved her point. The janitor incident had simply opened her eyes to a problem that had existed all along. After 40 minutes of debate, the board approved the initiative by a 6-2 vote. Patricia and James voted against it, but Victoria's majority ownership meant their resistance was purely symbolic. As the meeting adjourned, Richard hung back. "You're protecting him," he said quietly once they were alone. Victoria didn't pretend to misunderstand. "I'm protecting the company from embarrassment. This morning made us all look foolish. He was right about Janitor, and I'd bet money he was right about Kaufman too, even if you won't admit it. Richard, I'm not going to push. You've been CEO for 12 years, and your instincts have always been solid. If you say we're moving on, we're moving on."
"But Victoria," he paused at the door, "be careful. People who know too much and hide too well usually have good reasons for both."
After he left, Victoria sat alone in the darkening conference room, watching the sun set over the city. Somewhere in this building, Marcus Washington was mopping floors, invisible once again. She wondered if he knew yet that she had kept her promises, both the spoken ones and the implied ones. At 7:15 the next morning, Victoria entered the executive bathroom on the 47th floor. The maintenance closet was immaculate as always. Behind the cleaning supplies, tucked into a bucket, was a folded piece of paper. She put on the disposable gloves she had brought and carefully unfolded it. The handwriting was neat, precise. "Your Barcelona deal. The local partner, Grupo Castellano, is owned 40% by a holding company that's under EU investigation for money laundering. The investigation hasn't been made public yet, but it will be within 3 weeks. Association with them will trigger mandatory compliance reviews and could freeze your European assets for up to 6 months during the investigation. Victoria felt her blood run cold. The Barcelona expansion was scheduled to launch in 2 weeks. If Marcus was right, and he was always right, they were about to walk into a regulatory nightmare. She memorized the information, then burned the paper in the sink with her lighter, washing the ashes down the drain. By 8 a.m., she had her legal team pulling European corporate registries. By noon, they had confirmed the holding company structure. By 5 p.m., they discovered sealed court documents indicating the investigation Marcus had mentioned. The Barcelona deal was quietly restructured with a different local partner. Nobody knew why, and Victoria wasn't telling. Over the next 3 weeks, 4 more notes appeared in the maintenance closet. One warned about a cybersecurity vulnerability in their payment processing system. It was found and fixed before any breach occurred. Another identified an embezzlement scheme by a mid-level accounting manager who had been stealing through fake vendor payments. Internal audit caught him based on Victoria's anonymous tip. A third revealed that their largest client was planning to switch providers due to poor customer service. Victoria personally intervened to save the account. The fourth predicted a market shift in semiconductor demand that would have caught them overstocked, and underpriced. They adjusted orders just in time. Each time, Victoria verified the information independently and took action without revealing her source. Her board was impressed by her suddenly enhanced business acumen. Patricia grudgingly admitted that Victoria seemed on fire lately. Richard just watched her with knowing eyes but said nothing. Marcus remained invisible. Victoria occasionally saw him in the early morning hours pushing his cleaning cart, nodding politely when their paths crossed. They never spoke. To everyone else, he was just the janitor, forgettable, beneath notice, part of the building's background. But Victoria knew better. Marcus Washington was the most valuable asset Sterling Industries had ever acquired, and nobody knew he existed. The arrangement worked perfectly until the morning Victoria found a note that made her hands shake. Someone is asking questions about me. Private investigator hired 6 days ago. Haven't identified the client yet, but they're digging into the missing 15 years. They're good professional, well-funded. I may need to disappear again. This might be my last communication. Victoria stared at the note, her mind racing through possibilities. Who would hire a private investigator to look into Marcus? The board had moved on from the incident weeks ago. Patricia had been skeptical but hadn't mentioned the janitor in recent meetings unless... She pulled out her phone and called her head of security, Donald Reed, a former Secret Service agent who ran background checks for all sensitive positions. Donald, I need information. Has anyone requested private investigation services through our corporate accounts recently? No, ma'am. Why? What about personal requests from board members? Anyone asking for background check recommendations? There was a pause. I'd have to review logs. That's not something I typically track. Make it a priority. I need to know within the hour if anyone associated with Sterling Industries has hired a PI in the last 2 weeks. Victoria spent the next 60 minutes in her office pacing. If someone was investigating Marcus, they were either threatened by him or curious about him. Either way, it meant his cover was blown more thoroughly than her public dismissal of him had suggested. Donald called back at 9:47 a.m. Found something. Patricia Morrison's assistant made a call to a private investigation firm called Sentinel Solutions 8 days ago. The call was on her personal cell, but she made it from our building, so it pinged our network. Did you get a warrant or reason? No, ma'am. Just the call record. But Sentinel Solutions specializes in corporate due diligence and background investigations. They're not cheap. Minimum retainer is $50,000. Victoria felt anger rising in her chest. Patricia had gone behind her back, directly defying Victoria's instruction to drop the matter. Worse, she had put Marcus in danger by potentially exposing his past. Thank you, Donald. Keep this between us. Victoria immediately scheduled an impromptu meeting with Patricia, marking it as urgent on the calendar. 20 minutes later, Patricia entered Victoria's office, her expression guardedly professional. You wanted to see me. Sit down, Victoria said coldly. Patricia sat, but her posture remained defensive. If this is about the Henderson contract, it's about your private investigator. The color drained from Patricia's face. I don't know what you're... Don't lie to me. Sentinel Solutions $50,000 retainer. You hired them to investigate Marcus Washington despite my explicit instruction that the matter was closed. Patricia's jaw tightened. Someone had to do it. You might be satisfied with half answers, but I'm not. That man knew too much, and you just accepted his story without. Without what? Without conducting an illegal investigation into an employee's private life? Without harassing someone for the crime of being observant? He's not just observant, Victoria. He's either a genius or a plant, and either way, we need to know which. What if he's gathering intelligence for a competitor? What if he's not? Victoria interrupted. I had him thoroughly investigated through proper channels. He's exactly what he appears to be, a man with a complicated past who wants to be left alone. Your investigation is intrusive, potentially illegal, and it stops now. You can't order me to. I can, and I am. You're on the board, Patricia, but I'm the CEO and majority shareholder. Call off your investigator immediately, or I'll call an emergency board session to discuss whether you still have a position here. The threat hung in the air. Patricia's face flushed with anger and humiliation, but she was practical enough to know Victoria meant it. Fine, Patricia said through gritted teeth. I'll cancel the contract, and you'll provide me with any information the investigator already gathered, all of it today. That's my personal property. It's information about my employee gathered in violation of company policy today, Patricia. Or we have that board meeting tomorrow morning. After Patricia left, slamming the door behind her, Victoria immediately composed a note on the special paper she now kept in her desk drawer. She wore gloves as she wrote. The threat is contained. Private investigator has been called off. You're safe, but we need to talk in person somewhere private. Parking garage, level 3, section B, 6 a.m. tomorrow. Come if you trust me. She placed the note in a sealed envelope and personally delivered it to the maintenance closet during a bathroom visit that afternoon. She had no idea if Marcus would see it in time or if he would show up even if he did. At 6 a.m. The next morning, Victoria stood in the parking garage's third level, section B, shivering slightly in the cold November air. She had never been in this section before. It was far from the executive spots, in a dimly lit corner reserved for maintenance and service vehicles. For 10 minutes she waited alone, beginning to think Marcus wouldn't come. Then she heard the soft sound of footsteps, and he emerged from behind a support pillar. You shouldn't have called off the investigator, Marcus said without preamble. Now Morrison knows you're protecting me. She'll wonder why. She already wondered why. This just cuts off her avenue of investigation for now. But she's smart. She'll find another way. Victoria stepped closer. Then maybe it's time to give her and the rest of the board a different story. Something that satisfies their curiosity without exposing the truth. Like what? Like the truth, but framed differently. You were in finance. You blew the whistle on criminal activity. You relocated for safety. All of that is true, but we leave out the details about who you worked for and what exactly happened. We make it sound like you testified in a lower-level fraud case. Nothing dramatic enough to warrant ongoing concern. Marcus shook his head. The moment you put that story out there, someone will dig deeper. They'll find news articles about the case names, details that don't match the sanitized version. What if there are no news articles? Victoria asked. What if the case was sealed? Federal prosecution, witness protection considerations, records kept confidential. Was it sealed? I don't know yet, but I can find out. And if it wasn't, I can probably make it sealed now. I have contacts at the DOJ who owe me favors. Retroactive sealing isn't unheard of in cases involving ongoing criminal enterprises. Marcus studied her for a long moment. Why are you doing this? You got what you wanted, a secret source feeding you information. Why risk exposing yourself to protect me? Victoria had asked herself the same question over the past few weeks. The answer wasn't simple. Because you were right, she finally said, about how we treat the people at the bottom of this organization, about how we make decisions based only on profit without considering who gets hurt. You've saved this company millions of dollars, but more than that, you've reminded me why I started Sterling Industries in the first place. It wasn't supposed to be just about money. What was it supposed to be about? Building something that mattered. Creating jobs. Making a difference. Victoria laughed bitterly. Somewhere along the way I forgot that. You made me remember. Marcus's expression softened slightly. The wage increases you pushed through. Maria Rodriguez was crying in the cafeteria when she heard. She can afford her insulin now without choosing between that and her kids' school supplies. Good. James Chen in security is planning a retirement party. He didn't think he'd make it to retirement here, thought he'd have to work until he dropped. Now he can actually stop. That was the point. So you're not just protecting me to keep your intelligence source, you actually care. I care about doing the right thing, Victoria said. Which includes making sure Patricia Morrison's curiosity doesn't get you killed. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then, the people who killed my sister, they're still out there. If they find out I'm alive, that I've resurfaced, I promise you, Marcus, I'll bury this so deep that nobody will ever connect Marcus Washington to whoever you used to be. You can't promise that. Watch me. Over the next week, Victoria called in every favor she had accumulated in 20 years of business. She spoke with a federal prosecutor she had helped with a fraud case 5 years earlier. She reached out to a senator whose campaign she had substantially funded. She contacted a DOJ official who had been her roommate at business school. The result was a carefully constructed paper trail that confirmed Marcus's story while revealing nothing. Yes, he had been a witness in a federal case. Yes, the case involved financial crimes. Yes, he had relocated afterward under informal witness protection guidelines. No, the specific details were not available due to ongoing investigative concerns. It was bureaucratic perfection, just enough truth to satisfy curiosity, just enough official obstruction to prevent deeper digging. Patricia received a formal letter from the DOJ explaining that Marcus Washington's background check had been conducted at federal levels and he had been cleared. Any further investigation would be considered interference with a protected witness and could result in legal consequences. Patricia was furious but stymied. She couldn't argue with the Department of Justice. 3 months after the incident, Sterling Industries was thriving. Fourth quarter profits were up 23%. Employee retention had improved by 38%. And Victoria had successfully navigated 4 major business decisions that would have been disasters without Marcus's insights. The board was calling it Victoria's golden period, attributing her success to renewed focus and sharper instincts. Only Richard suspected the truth, and he kept his suspicions to himself. Marcus continued his work silently, leaving notes every few days in the maintenance closet. His intelligence had become essential to Victoria's decision-making, but more importantly, his perspective had changed how she ran the company. She found herself asking different questions in board meetings. How will this affect our hourly workers? What's the human cost of this decision? Are we building something sustainable or just profitable? It made some board members uncomfortable. Patricia, in particular, pushed back on what she called Victoria's bleeding heart phase. But the results spoke for themselves. Sterling Industries wasn't just making money, it was building loyalty, reputation, and stability. Then, on a cold morning in late February, Victoria found a note that contained just 3 words. "We need to meet." She went to the parking garage at 6 a.m. the next day. Marcus was already there, and for the first time since she had known him, he looked genuinely worried. "What happened?" Victoria asked. "You remember the client I testified against? The one funding the trafficking operations?" "Of course. His name was Gregory Castellano. Does that sound familiar?" Victoria's blood went cold. "Castellano, as in Grupo Castellano, the Barcelona company you warned me about?" Marcus nodded grimly. "His nephew Ramon Castellano runs Grupo Castellano now. The family business has diversified since Gregory went to prison, legitimate enterprises mixed with the illegal ones. When I warned you about the EU investigation, I didn't realize the family connection. I should have, but I deliberately hadn't thought about that name in years. So when we backed out of the Barcelona deal, Ramon probably got curious about why. Sterling Industries was eager to partner, all negotiations were going smoothly, and then suddenly you pulled out right before the money laundering investigation went public. That's not luck. That's intelligence. Ramon is smart enough to wonder where you got your information." Victoria felt fear creeping into her chest. "You think he knows about you?" "I think he's asking questions. And the Castellano family has long memories." Marcus pulled out his phone and showed Victoria a photograph. "This man has been in the building 3 times this week. He's not an employee, not a contractor, not a visitor with legitimate business. He's surveilling." The photograph showed a nondescript man in his 30s, Latino, wearing a maintenance uniform. He was standing near the elevators looking at his phone. "How do you know he's surveillance?" Victoria asked. "Because I recognize the pattern. It's what I would do if I were trying to identify a leak, send someone who blends in, have them observe patterns, track who has access to what information. He's not here for me specifically, not yet. But he's here because Ramon wants to know how Sterling Industries got information they shouldn't have had. Victoria's mind raced through possibilities. We need to throw them off your trail, make them think our intelligence came from a different source. How? We leak a story? Something about how we hired a European consulting firm that stumbled onto the Grupo Castellano investigation? We make it look like dumb luck and good timing, not insider information? Marcus shook his head. Ramon won't buy that. He spent years around people who hide information. He'll dig deeper. Then we give him someone to find. A scapegoat? You mean, frame someone? Marcus's voice was sharp. I mean, hire someone specifically to be the apparent source. We bring in a consultant, someone with a background in European business intelligence. We make sure there's a paper trail showing they researched Grupo Castellano. When Ramon's people investigate, they find the consultant, not you. That's still putting someone else in danger. Not if we hire someone who's already protected, former CIA maybe, or retired FBI, someone who knows how to handle themselves and won't break under scrutiny. Marcus considered this. It might work, but we'd need to move fast. The longer that surveillance continues, the more patterns they'll identify. Victoria was already pulling out her phone. I know someone, Marcus Sutton. No relation to our Margaret Sutton. He used to work intelligence for the agency. Now he consults on international business risk. He's helped me vet overseas partners before. Can you trust him with my life? More importantly, he's handled situations like this before. If Ramon's people come after him, he'll know what to do. Within 3 days, Victoria had hired Marcus Sutton on a generous contract to review all European business partnerships for regulatory risks. She made sure the contract was highly visible, with copies going through legal, finance, and board review. She even mentioned it casually in a board meeting, explaining how the Barcelona situation had made her realize they needed better international due diligence. Patricia, ironically, praised the decision. This is exactly the kind of caution we should be exercising. Better to spend money on prevention than cleanup. Marcus Sutton arrived the following week, a silver-haired man in his 60s with the calm demeanor of someone who had seen everything twice. Victoria briefed him privately on the situation. So you need me to be the apparent source of intelligence that pissed off a Spanish crime family? Sutton said with a slight smile. Can you handle that, Mr. Sutton? I spent 15 years tracking drug cartels through 3 continents. The Castellanos are concerning, but they're not the most dangerous people I've dealt with. I'll make myself very visible, very traceable, and very convincing as your source. What if they come after you directly? Then they'll find someone who's prepared. Don't worry, I didn't survive the cartels by being careless. Sutton's presence in the building had an immediate effect. The surveillance man Marcus had identified shifted his attention, now tracking Sutton's movements, access, and interactions. Within 2 weeks, the man disappeared entirely. Marcus left a note confirming. Surveillance has ended. They found what they were looking for, or at least what we wanted them to find. But Victoria's relief was short-lived. A month later, Marcus Sutton called her with concerning news. We have a problem, he said without preamble. Ramon Castellano wants a meeting with you, with both of us. He knows I'm your consultant. He wants to discuss future business opportunities that avoid the unfortunate misunderstandings of the past. It's a threat dressed as an olive branch. Victoria felt cold dread. What do you recommend? We take the meeting public location, multiple witnesses, everything recorded. We treat it like legitimate business and see what he really wants. But Miss Sterling Sutton's voice turned serious. You should know that Ramon Castellano doesn't do anything without layers of purpose. If he wants a meeting, it's because he's planning something we haven't anticipated. The meeting was scheduled for a Friday afternoon at the Meridian Hotel, a 5-star establishment with excellent security and public spaces that made covert violence impractical. Victoria brought Marcus Sutton and her head of legal, Jonathan Price. Ramon Castellano arrived with 2 associates who looked more like bodyguards than business advisors. Ramon was younger than Victoria expected, perhaps 40, with careful eyes and a friendly smile that didn't reach them. He wore an expensive Italian suit and spoke perfect English, with only the faintest Spanish accent. Miss Sterling, thank you for agreeing to meet, he said warmly, shaking her hand. And Mr. Sutton, your reputation precedes you. They settled into a private dining room, but with hotel staff regularly checking in, maintaining the veneer of normality. Ramon ordered wine and made small talk about European markets for 15 minutes before finally arriving at his purpose. The Barcelona situation was unfortunate, he said carefully. My family's business has had some regulatory challenges, as you're aware, but those challenges are being resolved. I understand your company's concerns, but I believe they were based on incomplete information. Our due diligence was quite thorough, Sutton replied smoothly. I'm sure it was. You have an excellent background in intelligence work, Mr. Sutton, former CIA, correct? Specialized in financial crimes. Sutton's expression didn't change. I consult on international business risks now. Of course. And you consulted very effectively for Miss Sterling. It's impressive how quickly you identified issues with Grupo Castellano that even European regulators took months to uncover. Ramon's smile widened. One might almost think you had inside information. One might think we're simply good at our jobs, Victoria interjected. Ramon turned his attention to her. Undoubtedly, Sterling Industries has an enviable reputation for sharp decision-making. Some of your recent choices have been particularly prescient. The Dini Tech situation, for example. You pulled out of that acquisition just before a patent disaster. The Kaufman merger that never happened right before conflicts of interest emerged. It's as if you have a crystal ball. We have good analysts, Victoria said firmly. You have something more than that, I think. Ramon leaned back, his casual posture at odds with the intensity in his eyes. My Uncle Gregory is in prison, Miss Sterling. He'll die there. The evidence against him was overwhelming, provided by a witness whose identity was protected but whose impact was devastating. That witness destroyed my family's business, cost us millions, and led to prosecutions across 3 countries. Victoria felt her pulse quicken, but kept her face neutral. I'm sorry for your family's troubles, but I don't see what that has to do with Sterling Industries. Don't you? Let me draw you a picture. A financial analyst with exceptional skills testifies against my uncle. This analyst disappears into witness protection afterward, or so we were told. But witness protection has limits. It's expensive, time-consuming, and it only lasts as long as the government thinks the witness needs it. Ramon paused, letting his words sink in. That witness resurfaced somewhere, started a new life, and someone with that person's very specific knowledge base has been feeding Sterling Industries extraordinarily valuable intelligence. Marcus Sutton intervened smoothly. Mr. Castellano, if you're suggesting that Miss Sterling has hired a former witness against your uncle, that's both speculative and irrelevant. Many people work in financial analysis. The skills aren't unique. Oh, the skills are quite unique, Ramon countered. The ability to predict market movements, identify hidden corporate structures, anticipate regulatory investigations. These aren't common talents. They're the talents of someone who spent years building forensic financial cases for federal prosecutors. This conversation is veering into accusation, Jonathan Price warned. If you have a specific concern, state it clearly. Ramon's friendly facade finally dropped. My concern is simple. Someone cost my family a great deal of money and freedom. That someone is now helping Sterling Industries. I want to know who, and if we don't tell you, Victoria asked coldly, then I'll find out myself, and I'll be much less friendly when I do. Ramon stood up, his bodyguards immediately flanking him. I'm offering you a chance to resolve this amicably, Miss Sterling. Share your source with me, and we can all move forward. Refuse, and I'll dedicate considerable resources to uncovering the truth. Your company's operations will face challenges. Your partners will receive interesting information. Your employees will find their lives complicated. That sounds like extortion, Jonathan said sharply. That sounds like business, Ramon corrected. You have 1 week to consider my offer. After that, I take matters into my own hands. After Ramon left, Victoria, Sutton, and Jonathan sat in stunned silence. Finally, Sutton spoke. He knows. Maybe not exactly who or where, but he knows there's someone inside your organization feeding you information. Can he prove it? Victoria asked. He doesn't need to prove it. He just needs to create enough chaos to flush them out. If he starts investigating your employees, creating pressure, watching for reactions, Marcus would be exposed. Victoria finished. She felt sick. Her attempts to protect him had only painted a target on his back. We need to get him out, Jonathan said. Real witness protection, this time federal relocation. They won't take him, Victoria said. The case is closed. The threat isn't considered credible enough. Then private relocation. We have resources. We can move him somewhere. Safe, set him up with a new identity that's actually protected. Victoria thought about Marcus, his careful invisibility, his desire for peace, his loyalty to the other workers in the building. Running again would destroy him, but staying might kill him. There's another option, Sutton said slowly. We give Ramon what he wants, but not really. Explain, Victoria demanded. We create a false source, someone with the right background, the right skills, who could plausibly be the witness against Gregory Castellano. We make it so convincing that Ramon believes he's found his target. Meanwhile, your real source, Marcus, I assume remains hidden. You mean another scapegoat, Victoria said. I mean me, Sutton replied. My background is perfect former CIA, financial crimes expertise, the right age to have been working when Gregory Castellano was prosecuted. I can build a false identity that appears to be a sanitized version of a witness protection relocation. When Ramon investigates, he finds exactly what he's looking for. He'll come after you, Victoria said. Let him. Unlike your janitor, I'm prepared for that fight. I have resources, protection, and most importantly, I'm not actually the person who testified against his uncle. Eventually, Ramon will figure that out. But by then the trail will be cold, and your real source will be safe. Eventually could be too late for you, Jonathan pointed out. Sutton shrugged. It's a risk, but it's manageable. The alternative is letting Ramon tear apart Sterling Industries until he finds what he's looking for. That puts everyone at risk, including the innocent employees who will get caught in the crossfire. Victoria thought about Maria Rodriguez and her kids, about James Chen's upcoming retirement, about Tommy Williams and his student loans, about Marcus Washington, who had sacrificed everything once before to do the right thing and was about to pay for it again. I can't ask you to do this, she said finally. You're not asking. I'm offering. This is what I do, Miss Sterling. I've spent my career standing between dangerous people and the innocents they threaten. This is just another day's work. The decision was made. Over the next 3 days, Marcus, Sutton, and Victoria worked to build the perfect false trail. They created documents showing that Sutton had been hired 2 years earlier under a different name through a shell consulting company. They backdated correspondence and created phone records. They even had Sutton meet with several Sterling Industries employees, establishing a pattern of insider access. Marcus Washington was kept informed through their usual communication method. His response was brief. This is my fight. Don't sacrifice someone else for me. Victoria wrote back. It's everyone's fight now. Trust me, please. On the 6th day after Ramon's ultimatum, Victoria called him directly. I'll give you what you want, she said without preamble. But we do this privately, no threats to my company or employees. I'm listening, Ramon replied. The source you're looking for is Marcus Sutton, my international consultant. He testified against your uncle under a different name, David Morrison. He relocated afterward, changed his identity, and eventually found his way to consulting work. I hired him 2 years ago without knowing his background. When he realized I was considering business with Grupo Castellano, he warned me because he knew your family's history. There was a long pause. You expect me to believe this convenient story? Investigate it. You'll find everything checks out. Morrison's testimony was sealed, but if you have the resources you claim, you can verify he existed and that his skill set matches Sutton's. The timeline works. The background works. He's your witness. Why are you giving him up now? Because I won't let you destroy my company hunting for ghosts. Sutton made his choices. He can face the consequences. Another pause. If you're lying to me, Miss Sterling, you'll regret it. I'm not lying. Do your research. When you're satisfied, we're done. No more threats, no more investigation. Agreed? Agreed for now. The call ended. Victoria immediately contacted Sutton, who was already in a secure location preparing for whatever came next. It's done, she said. He's investigating now. Good. Let's see if he takes the bait. For 48 hours, nothing happened. Then Sutton called. I'm being followed, professional surveillance, at least 3 different operatives rotating shifts. They're not being subtle. They want me to know they're there. Are you safe? Safe enough. I'm in a secure facility with good security, but this is going to get more aggressive. You need to prepare for that. Victoria spent the next week expecting disasters. Every phone call could be news of violence. Every knock on her door could be police. But the days passed quietly. Then Ramon called again. Your story checks out, he said, his voice neutral. David Morrison was indeed a witness in my uncle's case. Marcus Sutton's background aligns with Morrison's. The timeline works. Congratulations, Miss Sterling, you've satisfied my curiosity. So we're done. Not quite. I'd like to meet with Mr. Sutton privately. Victoria's blood ran cold. That wasn't part of our agreement. Consider it an addendum. I want to hear his story directly. If it's as truthful as you claim, he has nothing to fear from me. And if he refuses, then I'll assume you've been lying and we're back where we started. Your choice." Victoria immediately called Sutton. "He wants a meeting." "Of course he does. Ramon isn't stupid. He wants to look me in the eye and gauge whether I'm really the witness. He's betting I'll break under pressure or reveal something that doesn't match the story. Can you handle it? We're about to find out." The meeting was arranged for neutral ground, a federal building in downtown Boston with security present and multiple witnesses. Ramon couldn't risk overt violence in such a location, but the psychological pressure would be intense. Victoria insisted on attending over Sutton's objections. "If this goes wrong, I'm responsible. I'll be there." The meeting room was small and sterile, with 4 chairs and a security camera clearly visible in the corner. Ramon arrived alone this time, his bodyguards left outside. He sat across from Sutton, studying him for a long, uncomfortable moment. "David Morrison," Ramon finally said. "Or do you prefer Marcus Sutton?" "I prefer Sutton." "Morrison is dead, is he? Tell me about the case against my uncle." Sutton had prepared for this. He recited facts from the public record of the case dates, locations, charges. He added details that a witness would know: how long the investigation took, which federal agencies were involved, how the trial proceeded. He mixed truth with careful fabrication, creating a narrative that sounded authentic. Ramon listened without interruption. When Sutton finished, Ramon leaned forward. "You cost my family everything," he said quietly. "Your uncle cost your family everything. I just made sure he couldn't hurt anyone else. Noble. Tell me, Mr. Sutton, do you sleep well at night knowing that your testimony put a man in prison for life?" "Better than I slept while he was free." Ramon smiled without humor. "You're either very convincing or telling the truth. I haven't decided which." He stood up. "But I'm a practical man. Whether you're really David Morrison or an elaborate decoy Miss Sterling created to protect someone else, the result is the same. I have a name, a face, and a story that satisfies my need for closure." "So we're done?" Victoria asked. "We're done with one condition." Ramon looked directly at Sutton. "If I ever discover you're not who you claim to be, if I find out there's someone else hiding in Sterling Industries feeding Miss Sterling information, I won't be this civilized." "Understood?" "Understood," Sutton said calmly. After Ramon left, Victoria and Sutton sat in silence for several minutes. "Do you think he believed it?" Victoria finally asked. "I think he's choosing to believe it because the alternative is admitting he can't find the real witness. Ramon's smart enough to know we might have played him, but he's also practical enough to take the win we've given him. He got a name. He got satisfaction. That's enough for now." "For now," Sutton agreed. "But Miss Sterling, your janitor, needs to stay invisible forever. One slip, one moment of visibility, and Ramon will figure out he was played. Then all of this was for nothing." 3 months passed without incident. Marcus Sutton remained in protective security, gradually reducing his precautions as it became clear Ramon had accepted the story. Sterling Industries continued thriving under Victoria's leadership, with Marcus Washington's quiet intelligence still guiding critical decisions. But the close call with Ramon had changed something in Victoria. She realized that Marcus's arrangement valuable as it was put him in constant danger. Every piece of intelligence he provided was another thread that could eventually unravel and expose him. She couldn't keep using him without risking his life. One morning she left a note in the maintenance closet. "We need to talk. Same place. 6 a.m. tomorrow." Marcus was waiting when she arrived at the parking garage. He looked tired, older than his 58 years. The stress of the Ramon situation had aged him. "I'm ending this," Victoria said without preamble. "The arrangement, the intelligence, all of it." Marcus stared at her. "Why?" "Because I almost got you killed. Because Ramon is still out there. And if he ever suspects the truth, Sutton's sacrifice means nothing. Because you deserve to actually disappear, not just pretend to, while constantly risking exposure." "That's not your decision to make," Marcus said quietly. "Yes, it is. I'm your employer, and I'm telling you no more notes, no more intelligence, no more involvement in corporate decisions. You go back to being just a janitor, invisible for real this time. And Maria Rodriguez, James Chen, Tommy Williams, all the people who benefit from having someone watching out for them? I'll watch out for them. You showed me how. I'll pay attention, ask questions, make decisions that consider their welfare, but I'll do it without putting you at risk." Marcus was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was heavy with emotion. "You're better at this than you give yourself credit for, Miss Sterling. 3 months ago you wouldn't have even known their names. Now you're protecting them without being asked. That's leadership. I learned from you. No, you remembered who you were before success made you forget." I just held up a mirror. Victoria felt tears threatening and blinked them back. "So you agree we end this?" "I agree, but on one condition." "What?" "Train someone to replace me. Not with intelligence, you're right, that's too dangerous. But with advocacy. Find someone in this building who cares about the workers the way I do. Give them a voice at the executive level. Make sure there's always someone asking the hard questions about human cost." Victoria thought for a moment. "Tommy Williams, the young maintenance worker. He's been organizing an informal support network for the hourly staff, helping people find resources when they're struggling, connecting them with assistance programs. He's got the instincts for it." "Tommy's good," Marcus agreed. "Give him a title employee welfare advocate, something like that. Pay him enough that he can focus on it instead of just surviving. Let him bring concerns directly to you without going through channels. I'll do it. I'll announce it next week." They stood in the parking garage as the sun began to rise, painting the concrete in shades of gold. After all the danger and deception, there was something peaceful about this moment and ending that was also a beginning. "What will you do?" Victoria asked, "when you're really invisible again?" "Exactly what I've been doing: clean floors, watch over people who need watching over. Maybe actually relax instead of constantly gathering intelligence." Marcus smiled slightly.